Nathan Cole didn't just think he was successful, he thought success belonged to him. New York City had shaped him that way. The speed, the pressure, the endless chase for more, it had carved arrogance into his personality like a signature. He lived high above the noise, inside a glass and steel penthouse where the city looked small, controllable, almost obedient. From up there, everything made sense to him. Money flowed, people followed, power answered when he called. Nathan believed he had earned the right to look down on others, especially on his wife. Lena Cole existed in his world like a quiet shadow. She moved softly through the penthouse, her presence subtle, her voice calm, her expressions controlled. To strangers, she looked ordinary, almost forgettable. She didn't flash wealth, she didn't command attention, she didn't demand space. And that was exactly why Nathan never feared her. Years earlier, when Nathan was still climbing, Lena had been his anchor. She stayed when deals fell apart. She believed when investors laughed him out of rooms. She carried emotional weight while he chased financial power. But once the empire stood tall, once the money stopped being a question, Nathan rewrote the story in his head. He convinced himself he succeeded alone, and people who believe they've done everything alone feel entitled to everything. Nathan stopped seeing Lena as a partner. He started seeing her as part of the scenery, useful, familiar, replaceable. He controlled the money, the accounts, the legal structures. He made sure she had comfort but not authority, stability but not access, security but no influence. It wasn't cruelty in his mind, it was order. Lena felt the shift long before it had a name. It showed up in small moments. The way Nathan no longer asked her opinion, the way conversations ended before they began, the way his phone never left his hand but never showed its screen, the way silence replaced warmth. She didn't accuse him, she didn't argue, she watched. Watching became her survival skill. Nathan, meanwhile, was expanding his life in every direction except toward her. New connections, new indulgences, new habits. He stayed out later, traveled more, came home emotionally vacant. When he looked at Lena, it was with impatience, as if her presence interrupted something more important. He believed she needed him. That belief gave him confidence, and confidence made him careless. Money started moving in strange ways. Large sums shifted between accounts under vague labels. Business expenses blurred into personal indulgence. Nathan assumed complexity would protect him. He assumed his intelligence placed him beyond consequences. Most of all, he assumed Lena wouldn't understand any of it. But Lena noticed patterns the way some people notice weather changes, slowly, quietly, instinctively. She noticed repeated transfers on the same dates, the same unfamiliar names, the same delays in reporting. She didn't need to know exactly what it meant yet, she only needed to know something was wrong. Emotionally, she was unraveling, but not publicly. At night, when Nathan slept without guilt, Lena lay awake staring into the dark, replaying memories. When did affection turn into tolerance? When did partnership turn into hierarchy? She felt grief, not just for the marriage, but for the version of herself who once believed love protected people from becoming strangers. But grief didn't consume her, it sharpened her. Instead of confronting Nathan, Lena started learning, quietly, obsessively. She read articles, watched lectures, studied financial systems. She didn't chase answers emotionally, she chased understanding. Pain became fuel. Nathan mistook her silence for acceptance. He thought she had adjusted to her place. That assumption made him bolder. He spoke about his company, his money, his future. Lena existed in his sentences only as an accessory. He underestimated how dangerous that was. Lena wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. She was gathering clarity, and clarity is the most threatening thing in a room full of lies. She learned enough to recognize fraud without needing to name it, enough to understand that Nathan's empire wasn't as solid as it looked, enough to see that arrogance had created cracks he didn't even bother to hide. Every discovery hurt, but every discovery also freed her a little more. Nathan thought power meant control over others. Lena was learning that power meant control over oneself. By the time Nathan realized something had changed in her eyes, something colder, steadier, it was already too late to trace back to the beginning, because the woman he thought was dependent had started standing on knowledge, and knowledge doesn't ask for permission. Understood. Silence can be mistaken for weakness only by people who have never had to survive it. For Nathan Cole, silence meant victory. It meant compliance. It meant Lena had finally accepted the version of reality he had designed for her. He walked through the penthouse with the confidence of a man who believed nothing around him could shift without his approval. But silence had stopped being emotional for Lena. It had become strategic. She learned to move through the house like air, present but unnoticed. Nathan no longer registered her routines, her timing, her presence. That invisibility gave her freedom, and freedom gave her access. Lena stopped reacting to Nathan's moods. She stopped seeking affection where none existed. The emotional distance that once hurt now created space. Space to think, space to observe, space to connect the dots without interference. She noticed how carelessness followed arrogance. Nathan reused passwords because he trusted his own intelligence too much. He left documents open because he believed no one around him could understand them. He assumed complexity was protection. He assumed confidence was camouflage. Those assumptions became his weakness. Late at night, while the city outside glowed like a living organism, Lena sat with a quiet focus that felt almost surgical. She didn't rush, she didn't skim, she absorbed. Every document she studied revealed another layer of Nathan's world, one built not on brilliance, but on shortcuts. There were shell companies with vague purposes, transfers routed through accounts that didn't belong in the company's ecosystem, contracts inflated just enough to hide extraction. It wasn't chaos, it was a system. And systems can be mapped. Lena didn't panic when she realized the scale of it. She didn't feel fear the way she once would have. Something inside her had shifted. Pain had burned itself down to clarity. She understood now that Nathan wasn't just betraying her emotionally, he was exploiting trust everywhere he touched. Investors trusted him, employees depended on him, and he treated it all like a personal vault. That realization did something unexpected. It removed the last piece of guilt Lena carried. This was no longer a private heartbreak. This was a structural collapse waiting to happen. Nathan's behavior grew louder even as Lena grew quieter. He came home late with the casual entitlement of someone who believed consequences were for other people. He talked about future plans that didn't include her. He spoke about money as if it were proof of worth. Lena listened. She learned something critical during that time. Men like Nathan don't fear confrontation. They fear exposure. So she avoided confrontation completely. Instead, she focused on precision. She organized everything she found into timelines, categories, patterns. What mattered legally, what mattered ethically, what mattered strategically. She learned the difference between suspicion and proof, between anger and evidence. Every night she backed up her findings in places Nathan would never think to look. She didn't trust a single device. Redundancy became her insurance. And slowly, quietly, she started reaching outward, not emotionally, professionally. She asked questions without revealing context. She learned how audits worked, what triggered investigations, what patterns raised flags. She didn't accuse, she listened. The answers confirmed what she already knew. Nathan wasn't untouchable. He had just never been challenged. Meanwhile, Nathan's world began shifting in subtle ways he couldn't immediately explain. Delays replaced instant approvals. Responses slowed. The effortless momentum he relied on started resisting him. At first, he blamed inefficiency, then timing, then people. He never considered Lena. That blind spot protected her. Lena noticed his irritation before he did, the way he paced, the way his confidence flickered when things didn't move fast enough. She felt no satisfaction yet, no triumph, just a steady sense of inevitability, because she knew something Nathan didn't. The collapse of power is rarely loud at the start. It whispers first. Nathan became sharper at home, less patient. He dismissed Lena more openly now, mistaking her emotional distance for defeat. He believed dominance required reinforcement. He didn't realize he was only feeding her resolve. Every insult clarified something for her. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a phase. This was who he had chosen to become. And Lena chose something else. She stopped thinking about saving the marriage. She stopped imagining apologies. She stopped wondering why. Instead, she focused on how systems fail, how lies overlap, how truth moves when it's handled correctly. The woman Nathan thought depended on him had become the most dangerous person in his orbit, not because she was angry, but because she was calm, and calm people don't act impulsively, they act decisively. The first formal inquiry didn't come with flashing lights or dramatic consequences. It came quietly, a request, a routine check, something Nathan believed he could handle the way he always had. But this time, the ground beneath him wasn't solid, because Lena wasn't watching anymore. She was directing. And Nathan, for the first time in years, felt something unfamiliar creeping into his confidence: uncertainty. Power doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes. Nathan Cole didn't wake up one morning knowing his world was falling apart. If he had, he might have fought harder. Instead, the collapse arrived the way rot does, quietly, invisibly, until the structure could no longer support itself. At first, the signs were subtle. A deal stalled longer than it should have. A partner suddenly needed more time. A bank asked questions it never used to ask. Nathan dismissed it all as friction, temporary resistance in a system that always bent back in his favor. That belief kept him comfortable, and comfort kept him blind. He doubled down on control: longer hours, sharper decisions, less patience for anyone who moved at his pace. His confidence became louder, more performative, like a man trying to convince the room and himself that he still owned it. Lena watched the shift from a distance that was no longer emotional. She had moved past hurt. What she felt now was precision. Every new inquiry, every unexpected delay, every tightened process fit neatly into the framework she had helped set in motion. Nothing was rushed, nothing was forced. The system was doing exactly what systems do when exposed to truth. They corrected themselves. Nathan felt the pressure in his body before he understood it intellectually. His sleep became restless, his jaw stayed clenched, his mind raced even when his phone was silent. The invincibility he once wore like a second skin began to crack. He started suspecting enemies, competitors, disloyal partners, market shifts, anyone but the person who shared his bed. That blind spot remained his greatest weakness. Lena had learned something essential during this phase. Destruction didn't require aggression, it required alignment. When facts align with process, outcomes become inevitable. She didn't interfere, she didn't intervene, she let momentum work. The inquiries deepened, audits widened. Nathan was asked to explain discrepancies he once buried under confidence and jargon. He relied on the same tactics that had always worked: deflection, charm, intimidation. But this time, none of it stuck. The system wasn't emotional. It didn't care how impressive he sounded. It cared about numbers. Nathan's world started shrinking. Access narrowed, trust thinned. The circle that once reinforced his dominance now hesitated around him. People listened more carefully, took notes, asked follow-ups. That terrified him, not because he was guilty, at least not in his own mind, but because he was losing narrative control. And for men like Nathan, narrative is everything.
At home, the energy shifted again. He sensed Lena's detachment more clearly now. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't anger, it was something worse: indifference. She no longer reacted to his tone, no longer adjusted her behavior to accommodate his moods. She existed independently, confidently, as if her emotional tether to him had been severed. That unsettled him. Nathan attempted dominance without realizing it. Subtle assertions, reminders of hierarchy, financial references meant to re-establish power. But Lena didn't respond the way she once did. She didn't shrink, she didn't flinch. And that silence, controlled, intentional, made him uneasy. Meanwhile, the weight of consequence grew heavier. Advisors stopped reassuring him. Legal language replaced casual conversation. Risk assessments replaced praise. Nathan had always believed intelligence could outmaneuver accountability. What he was learning now is that intelligence without integrity collapses under scrutiny. The first real loss came quietly. An account he relied on froze without warning. Temporary, they said, routine. But the message was clear. His money was no longer entirely his. Panic crept in. Not loud, not desperate, but sharp and disorienting. Nathan masked it with aggression, but inside, fear had found its way in. Lena recognized the moment before he did. She saw it in his movements, in his impatience, in the way he spoke too quickly, too forcefully. Power was slipping, and he didn't know where to grab. She felt no triumph, only certainty.
The truth had momentum now, and momentum doesn't stop for ego. Nathan tried to regain control the only way he knew how, by tightening his grip on what remained. He scrutinized employees, pressured partners, demanded loyalty. But loyalty bought with fear dissolves under pressure. People distanced themselves quietly, exactly the way Lena had. The irony was brutal. The man who believed he controlled everything had failed to notice the one person who truly understood the system he exploited. Because Lena had never tried to beat him at his own game, she had simply learned the rules better. As the investigation intensified, Nathan's confidence finally cracked. Not publicly, not dramatically, but internally, where no one could see. He started waking up with a weight in his chest, a feeling he couldn't name. Vulnerability. And vulnerability terrified him more than exposure ever could. He still didn't know Lena's full role, but he was beginning to understand something far worse. He had underestimated someone, and the consequences were already in motion. By the time the final phase began, when formal actions replaced inquiries, Nathan no longer felt like a king. He felt like a man standing on ground that could collapse at any moment. And Lena, she was already standing somewhere else, waiting. The end didn't arrive with chaos. It arrived with paperwork. That was the part Nathan Cole never imagined. He had always assumed downfall would look dramatic: sirens, headlines, public spectacle. Instead, it looked like formal notices, locked access, measured language, and doors that no longer opened when he pushed them. The machine he once manipulated had turned neutral, and neutrality, he learned too late, is unforgiving. The final phase moved fast, not rushed, efficient. The system no longer questioned whether something was wrong. It now operated on confirmation. Evidence had weight, patterns had names, intent had consequences. Nathan's authority evaporated in increments. First, decision-making privileges were suspended. Then financial discretion was restricted. Then oversight became mandatory. Every step stripped away a layer of autonomy he once believed permanent. Control didn't vanish, it was revoked. He tried to fight it the only way he knew how, by asserting dominance, by insisting on his past wins, by reminding people who he was. But identity means nothing when facts are louder. His reputation began collapsing from the inside out. Partners distanced themselves. Investors protected their interests. Advisors spoke carefully, no longer shielding him. Loyalty dissolved quietly, just as Lena had learned it would. Power, he discovered, is conditional, and conditions had changed. At home, the penthouse felt different, larger, colder. The silence wasn't tense anymore, it was final. Lena moved through the space with purpose, not avoidance. She wasn't hiding, she wasn't retreating, she was transitioning. Nathan noticed details he had ignored for years: boxes quietly filled, documents organized, personal items disappearing in stages. Not rushed, not emotional, intentional. For the first time, he felt fear that had nothing to do with money. He felt irrelevant. Lena no longer existed in reaction to him. Her life had momentum of its own now. She woke with direction. She left without explanation. She returned without obligation. And Nathan realized something that hit harder than any investigation. He had already lost her. Not recently, long ago. The truth settled in slowly, painfully. Lena hadn't destroyed him out of revenge. She hadn't acted from rage or bitterness. She hadn't even tried to punish him. She had simply stopped protecting him. That realization stripped away the last excuse he clung to. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't betrayal. This was consequence. The day the final determinations were issued, Nathan didn't react the way people expected. No explosion, no collapse, just stillness, a hollow acceptance that settled into his chest like gravity. His empire didn't belong to him anymore. Not legally, not socially, not psychologically. The man who believed he owned everything had discovered the truth too late. He owned nothing he didn't respect. Lena's exit was quiet. There were no dramatic confrontations, no speeches, no need to explain herself. Everything that mattered had already been said, through actions, not words. She left behind what she didn't need. She took what was hers, legally, cleanly, completely. Walking away didn't feel triumphant. It felt light, like stepping out of a room where the air had been toxic for too long, like breathing without permission for the first time in years. Freedom didn't arrive as happiness, it arrived as peace. Lena didn't look back. She didn't need closure from Nathan. Closure had come the moment she chose herself over endurance, the moment she realized silence didn't have to mean suffering, it could mean preparation. Nathan remained behind, surrounded by the remnants of a life he thought was permanent. Wealth reduced, influence fractured, identity questioned. He finally understood the cost of underestimation. It wasn't financial, it was existential. He had built everything on the assumption that others were weaker, and that assumption destroyed him. He thought silence meant weakness. He was wrong. Some people don't fight back. They wait, and when they leave with everything.